Hello guys, welcome back to Path of Nostalgia with a Mr. Men and Little Miss. Oh yes. So let's go for the little bit of backstory first for this. So in terms of what it is, if people don't really know, Mr. Men was basically a book series created by Roger Hargreaves. The main inspiration came from his son Adam. He asked him what does a tickle look like. And obviously he drew on this little orangey character known as Mr. Tickle along with the arms who tickles people. Absolutely. And from then on, he created a whole host of characters, different personalities, like, you know, one called Mr. Strong, one called Mr. Messy, who's basically like pink squibbles, very much like sort of, it's like a bit like a cloud on legs, really, but interestingly. Mr. Nosy with a long nose, Mr. Bump, some blue eyes, round blue fellow with bandages, who's constantly clumsy and injuring himself. Mr. Happy as well, who's always constantly smiling, full of personality. Mr. Small, there's quite a lot actually to go on from. Mr. Grumpy, you can name quite a lot actually. And that became successful. That came out in the 70s, in the very early 70s, the book series. And that's subsequently made a TV show about it. So the Mr. Men. So we'll go into this now. So this TV show was done in about 74, I think, and features the narration by Arthur Lowe, who played Captain Mannering in Dad's Army. Of course, the famous part he's done quite a few things before and since then, really. But Mannering was more sort of the main role he was remembered playing, really. And obviously, he voices like all of them, really. Gives them some distinct personality, really. Some of the side characters as well, like some of the human characters that interact, always give them like one of them, I think he gives like a Yorkshire accent, really, so it makes it a bit more like very northern and everything else. He has like a bit of an interesting, again, it's all like that's all like grandfatherly type storyteller range, really, yeah, and that sort of really. But it's a nice little series. It was again during the 70s, of course, interestingly, and yeah, it's nice little charming series, of course. If you're familiar with Arthur Lowe from Dad's Army, give this a little a listen, really, or a watch and a listen, really. To be honest, you know, it could be something interesting, really. I only found about it maybe many years ago, actually. Like they did an original series back in the 70s. I'll get into the one I'm familiar with later on. So after that, of course, it's on to the 1980s. Actually, Roger Hargreaves did a spin-off series, of course, which was Little Miss, focused on female characters. You know, like, think of the name. Little Miss Sunshine is one. Little Miss Charbox is another one. There's quite a few actually. There's about quite a decent amount actually in that one in the 80s. And obviously, during that run, of course, there was another TV series, of course. The sequel TV series, a spin-off TV show for the Mr. Men, which was Little Miss. And this actually features two storytellers. Actually, you have Pauline Collins and John Alston doing the voices. John Alston, of course, went on to do Fireman Sam afterwards, you know, for the original Bumper Films TV show, which is, again, John Alston, if you give him to narrate a show, it'll be absolute dynamite. And obviously, this earlier, it predates Fireman Sam, this does, this Little Miss series. And you can hear the voices that he would tend to do for, like, you know, Station Officer Steele and Elvis Crillington afterwards. When you listen to it, you think, oh yeah, that sounds very familiar. Like, you know, of course, like, in some of the male characters, of course, they have like, I think like Mr. Clever, really, or whatever, I think so, Mr. Clever and everything else, they always have that sort of like upper class type, you know, very sort of gusto type voice, like what Station Officer Steele had in the TV show, really. So you can see the inspiration and also the sort of the origins of those voices come from this TV show. And of course, you've got Pauline Collins, who went on to do, I think, for what I can gather, I think she was in EastEnders for a while, I think. Actually, did she? She was in Liverbirds, if I can remember. Doctor Who, she was in The Faceless Ones, meant to be her companion. Samantha Briggs in The Faceless Ones, meant to replace Ben and Polly, but she never did. She never wanted to commit herself to the TV show, of course, which would have been interesting. She did appear later on in Tooth and Claw with David Tennant in his first series, playing Queen Victoria. So there's a little bit of Doctor Who history there for you. A little plug in there. And yeah, interestingly, I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty interesting actually, because it's interesting because they only did one series of it really. Like out of that run, they did 13 stories, and that's about it actually, based on the books. The only thing I can really think of like is also interesting is the theme tune at the end. Like the opening tune is all right. It's not the best really. I mean, compared to, because it's of the 80s, it's a bit more upbeat, a bit more poppy, really. It's when you get to the closing credits, it's actually a bit more interesting. It has a disco vibe, but the opening bit of it is actually a bit strange, really, because like it's like people like chanting or screaming, there's like crashing cymbals. It's like it's we'll bid you farewell with a disco beat on it. It's like interesting, actually very, very interesting. So there we go for that one. So that's a little miss done on that one. There was also a Christmas special, of course, that was done in the early 90s, I think for ITV at the time. I think BBC did those original ones done by the BBC. Then ITV come along and took the rights on and actually broadcasted this Christmas special from the early 90s. I can't remember much about it. It's like a feature-length special, really. And then you come on to the one that I saw remember, which was repeated on television quite a bit, actually, and that was the Mr. Men, Little Miss, which was that 90s, I think you call it like a French-Canadian English show, 2D animation, very short ones as well. They only last about 5 minutes. They do like little segments, like focusing on different adventures, really. The only ones I can really think of, there's some that stick to mind, really. The one I can really think of, well, there's two actually, to be honest. It's one Mr. Skinny has a shower and he goes down the drain and he ends up stuck in the drains with Mr. Messy, really, in a rowing boat or whatever. That's one of them I can remember. And the other one being Mr. Nosy enters a circus, and towards the end of the episode, he ends up being bashed on by a rubber egg or something. Like he ends up breaking his nose, I think. I don't know who was that from. I'm not really sure. It might be Mr. Bum doing juggling that with eggs, like with rubber eggs, and he just ends up knocking Mr. Nosy out, really. So, but that's all I can remember. I think the other one I could really probably think is Mr. Dizzy doing dog sitting Mr. Clever's dog, really. That was included on Gone Until It's Free, actually, the compilation I made. So there's probably that to remember as well. But it's a nice little series, very interesting, very short as well, very bite-sized TV show as well. And I think they did another Christmas special afterwards, and I think a few years afterwards, one was special, and probably that's about it really with Mr. Men, because afterwards, I know they did more, but I think it was very, very more Americanized really afterwards. Like they really upped the ante, like make it a bit more approachable for the US market, I think, afterwards. But one other thing else is that Adam carried on the mantle, of course, of his father's legacy, of course, and also just recently I think a couple of years ago, he did the Doctor Who related ones as well, focused on each of the Doctors, like in Mr. Men Form, which is very interesting, very delightful as well, actually. Nice little books, children's books, with that sort of thing. Pretty nicely done. Although it'd be pretty strange if they'd probably be a way across. There's a crossover anyway, but will there be an actual crossover in television history? Who knows? Like in television form, who knows? I don't know. Probably not really. But that'd be really interesting. It'd be weird actually. You can make a British Mr. Men show, like also incorporate a spin-off of Doctor Who in it. Who knows? They could probably do many more. Like do one of characters, like famous characters from history or something. In Boy Mr. Men form. There's an idea. Some people probably think, well, it might be a bit strange, but it might be interesting. Who knows? But it's nice. It's an interesting franchise. It is, full of colourful characters. They're still memorable to this very day. People still read the books, of course, and argues himself, his son is still carrying the legacy, so he's doing well, creating more and more characters over time. Nice, which is nice to know. One of them was quite interesting, which is called Mr. Nobody or Mr. Nowhere, I think. Mr. Nobody it's called. Interesting. So, but there we go, guys. I'll be talking about Mr. Men and Little Miss. Well, the Mr. Men, then Little Miss, then subsequent TV shows from the 90s, of course, through the book history. But there we go. Thank you guys for watching. As always, see you for the next video, and I'll see you later.